Hello and welcome to the Federalist YouTube channel. My name is Tristan Justice and I'm a staff writer at the Federalist base here in Denver. And joining me today is the Prime Minister of East Turkistan's government in exile, Salih Hudayar. Prime Minister, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, good. So just to our viewers who might not know, where is East Turkestan?
East Turkestan is located in the heart of Central Asia. It is what China refers to as Xinjiang, or the New Territory. It's where millions of Uyghurs and others are being sent to concentration camps, slave labor camps, and prisons.
Would you be able to go through the history in a bit of how the territory was renamed to Xinjiang today?
Yes. In 1876, the Manchu Qing dynasty invaded and occupied East Turkestan. In 1884, they renamed it to Xinjiang, meaning the New Territory. However, the people of East Turkestan declared independence twice, the first time in 1933 on November 12th, and once more on November 12th, 1944, as the East Turkestan Republic, and maintained our independence until December 22nd, 1949, when the Chinese communists invaded and occupied East Turkestan and renamed it once more to Xinjiang.
So how many people live there today?
So we estimate that the population of East Turkestan's Turkic people is 35 to 40 million. However, the official statistics shown by the Chinese government states that it's about 13.5 million of 12 million, which are Uyghurs. However, if you look at their Xinhua State media reported back in 2018 that they collected the DNA samples and voice prints and retina scans of 36 million people between the ages of 12 and 65, and these are non-Chinese people in East Turkestan, despite the fact officially at that time the total population of East, including the Chinese people, was 24.5 million.
Now, it's pretty well documented that there's some the oppression of the Uyghur Muslims up there. What is it like to live in East Turkestan today?
So if you're not in the concentration camps or not in the slave labor camps or in the prisons, you are living in a police state where every activity, everything that you do is monitored. You have a government, employee, which is paired up with your family as a relative, as what China calls a relative program, to monitor your daily activities, to ensure that you are loyal to the Chinese state and the party, to even go from one part of your village to another. You are going to hit checkpoints almost every 500 meters. To leave your own town, you have to get a special green pass to just even leave your own town. This is the type of surveillance system that China has placed. I mean, the surveillance system there is, actual people living in your homes with you, monitoring your activities, CCTV cameras with artificial intelligence all over, East Turkestan, even in the villages, and constant, military patrols and checkpoints.
Okay. And I understand that you're from that area and that you fled as a child. Is that right?
Yes.
And what was that experience like?
At that time, it was a little bit relaxed, but the oppression was very much, there. And because of this, we were forced to flee East Turkestan after, the Chinese government. They were harassing a lot of our family members. They were harassing our entire population, and my father had fled to the U.S. Several years prior, and he was able to get us to the United States in 2000.
Gotcha. I want to pivot now to some recent legislation that's in Congress that looks like it's headed towards the president's desk. It's called the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. It passed the House overwhelmingly bipartisan, 406 to 3. It's expected to be signed by President Trump or potential President Biden. But American corporations are pushing back on this law. If passed, it would ban imported products that are manufactured using forced labor, especially from that province. And so I just want to ask you, why do you think some of these U.S. companies, we know based on New York Times reporting this week that Coca-Cola, Nike, and Apple have all deployed their teams of lobbyists and spent millions of dollars pushing back on this law. Why do you think these corporations are pushing back against it?
Well, one is if this when this law gets passed, these companies are going to have to either seek other alternative suppliers, or they will have to actually hire people to work instead of Uyghur slaves, which will drive up the costs, their operating costs, and diminish their profit margins. So they are thinking from looking at this from from strictly a business point of view, trying to ensure that they make as much profit as they can, and so it's going to hurt their profits, and this is why they're pushing back.
Do you think these companies are secretly using forced labor from East Turkestan?
It's been very well documented by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute that many of the suppliers that these companies use are indeed using Uyghur slave labor. For example, Nike, they use a company called Qingdao Shoe Factory, which is the primary supplier for Nike, which produces 7 million shoes a year. And they have several hundred Uyghur forced laborers that are working in this factory. So this would ultimately affect Nike to where either they would have to hire several hundred people, or they'd be violating sanctions, and they'd be slapped with they would be punished for this, or they would have to seek alternative suppliers, which would possibly take them time or probably shift outside of China.
Nike released a statement shortly after that report came out from Australia, rejecting all claims that the company uses forced labor. Do you think the company is lying when they say that?
If they weren't using forced labor, why are they pushing against this bill? That's the simple question that we have to ask. If there's nothing to hide, if there's nothing to worry about, why are you so against this bill?
Mm-hmm. So several of these companies, they rejected the New York Times saying that they were pushing back against this bill, and that they were saying instead they're just trying to simplify the bill, because they're saying as it stands, it would put undue stress on U.S. supply chains originating in China. Do you think any of their complaints on this legislation have any type of merit? For example, one of the things that they're pushing back on, they're saying that there are too many obstacles in China itself to include third-party auditors to be able to prove that their products weren't manufactured with Uyghur Muslims. Do you think any of these claims that these companies have made have any type of merit?
No, they're just trying to, again, thinking from a strictly business perspective, trying to maximize their profits. I mean, even having to get auditors, they would have to spend money on the auditors, and it's not about the auditing. Like, the auditors would probably find out that indeed they are using slave labor, and that's what's probably freaking them out, because in that case they would have to shift their suppliers, and most likely right now in China and East Turkestan, many of these companies a lot of Chinese companies are using, the slave labor of Uyghurs, and so finding a Chinese company that's not is going to be, quite difficult. Sure, they can hire additional, actual people to work. That's not slave labor, but that's going to increase the cost of production and their operations, and diminish their profit margins. So this is why they are pushing against this bill.
Okay. I want to turn again and kind of talk about what the future looks like for East Turkestan. What do you think the road might look like next year with a potentially new administration under Joe Biden, with Tony Blinken at the helm of the State Department?
We're actually quite worried, I'll be honest with you. prior to setting up these concentration camps in 2016 and 2017, the Chinese government claimed that it was fighting against terrorism, and this is part of the excuse of why they have millions of people in concentration camps and these forced labor camps, is to, quote, fight against extremism and terrorism. And because of this, at that time, Anthony Blinken stated that China was doing the right thing and that the U.S. supported China's efforts to fight against terrorism, and that they would try to cooperate with them. And this worries us, because if this is the type of if this is going to be the next Secretary of State, things are going to go, there are going to be a lot of backpedaling, and this is what we fear. It took us years to just get the international community's attention about these atrocities. 3 years ago, nobody knew who Uyghurs were. Nobody knew who East Turkestan was. Governments knew about it. I mean, governments with all their, intelligence apparatus, all the information that they received, they knew very well what China has been doing in East Turkestan for the past 71 years. But the public didn't know. And now with this, we fear that it's just going to give China the green light to continue its, brutal campaign of colonization, genocide, and occupation in East Turkestan. We hope that's not the case. We hope that they, uphold their promises that they made during the campaign by recognizing it as a genocide. And we hope that they take stronger actions against China. For example, the Trump administration recently officially met with the Tibetan government in exile, and this is something that we are wanting the U.S. government to do, is to officially meet with the East Turkestan government in exile and see how we can work together to push back against China's atrocities.